there lovelies, it's Sarah Leonard here from acatlightcuriosity.com, and this little video is hopefully going to turn into a monthly event, and it's a question and answer session that I posted in my Curiously Gorgeous Sisterhood, which is my creative community, and also in my free Facebook group, the Curious Community. And I asked the lovely people in both of those communities to ask me any questions they might want me to answer on their behalf, and this video is my response to those questions basically. So let's have a little look first of all at some of the questions we have being asked. So Sama Morningstar said, I would love some tips about posting on Instagram and Pinterest. Particularly, do you do all of these, and Facebook too? How do you manage? It's a good question. I think the thing with social media is you have to remember that you can't really do everything necessarily. You are only one person, and particularly if social media doesn't really appeal to you, or you don't really enjoy it, or it's not really your thing, then chances are you're not going to be giving your best anyway. So what I would say is to always choose the social media outlet that suits you the best. So if, for example, you hate Pinterest and you can't understand for a second why anyone would use it, then perhaps it's not the right thing for you to be promoting yourself on. Perhaps you'd be better off focusing on Facebook or on Instagram, or whichever type of social media really appeals to you. Because I think when things are forced and people can kind of tell that you're not really into it, then it just makes it all less effective and less worthwhile anyway, if that makes any sense. I think I had another question about Instagram as well in the other group. Lolita asked for best tips for Instagram. So I'll talk about Instagram first of all. In terms of Instagram, best tip really is to have really, really good photos, really nice photographs that people like the look of, obviously. Don't take photographs in really poor light. Don't try and put out there photographs that just don't look all that pretty, because Instagram, the only thing you've got to go on really is just the picture itself, so it has to look nice to draw people's attention and to draw people in. So that's first and foremost. The other thing, in terms of getting more people to see your Instagram and getting more people to follow you and like your pictures and everything else, is to use hashtags. I have a whole range of hashtags that I regularly use. I have heard it said in some groups that people use up to 30 hashtags, that you can use up to 30 hashtags on Instagram. I suspect I'm slightly too lazy for 30 hashtags every single time, but I do tend to have maybe 10 or 12 hashtags on each of my photos. And if you're not sure about how hashtags work, they're just basically a way for people to search for different things. You can use them in Facebook and all kinds of other social media platforms. Twitter is very good for hashtags too. But on Instagram, people might put in that word. So say if they're looking for handmade gifts, they might put in handmade and then just see what pictures come up. So you might want to, if you make handmade things, you might want to tag your work with handmade. Simple as that. Other things to consider with regards to Instagram, consider possibly investing in some apps that are great for putting out quotes and different cute pictures on a regular basis. I have 3 different applications that I really love for creating quotes and different things for Instagram, and they're all part of a package by a lady called Ronna, R-H-O-N-N-A. I think it's Ronna Farah, and she has Ronna Designs, Ronna Collage and Ronna Magic, and they all come in a bundle for like £2.50 or something, very inexpensive. But you can create different collages with them. You can use her watercolory background, you can add quotes that are ready made and over the top, you can add flowers to your photos, you can do all sorts with them, and it just pretties things up, it makes things more interesting, and it means that you can post something inspiring more quickly and then get on with the rest of your day. So I definitely recommend apps like that, and I also have the A Beautiful Mess app as well for adding in text and different doodles on top of artwork and things. So try and mix up what you share. Obviously try and keep it consistent to what you're wanting people to respond to. So if you're mostly wanting people to respond to your artwork, then post your artwork. People do like behind the scenes little clips as well though, so don't shy away from posting photos of your cat. If your cat happens to be cute. My cat always gets the most likes and the most interest whenever I post a picture of him, much more so than anything else, because he is quite cute. So don't totally shy away from sharing things off topic, I suppose you might say, or off brand, but just try and create a sort of set of things that you do share, and first and foremost make sure that your photographs are very good. Okay, so that's a little bit about Instagram. Pinterest, I don't use very much, I must admit. Pinterest doesn't massively interest me. Most of my Pinterest posting is done via an automatic scheduler. So I use an online scheduler called ift.com, ifthisthenThat.com. And that just takes an image from all of my blog posts and puts them straight onto a Pinterest board. And the same for what I share on Instagram is automatically put onto a board on Pinterest. Personally, it doesn't appeal to me, and so therefore I don't spend much time there. And that's my big advice really with social media. If you don't like it, leave it alone. You don't have to be everywhere, you don't have to do everything. That's not necessarily necessary, if that makes sense. So that's Instagram and Pinterest covered. There's another question from the Curiously Gorgeous Sisterhood. This is Yancy Hibulil. I apologise in advance if I'm pronouncing people's names wrong. That's quite possible. The question is, how do you keep your creativity flowing? How do you keep the ideas coming? Which is a great question. I've never really suffered from not having enough ideas. What I tend to suffer from is not having enough time to put into practice the ideas that I have, because I tend to have, for every idea you might see me release on my website or share in my Facebook groups or whatever, there's usually like 700 other ones sort of in the background there waiting for me to have a go at. So personally, I don't really struggle with coming up with ideas. Like I say, I tend to have more than I can manage rather than anything else. They tend to come in the most unexpected places or unexpected ways though. So I might have a fantastic idea about an art workshop I could do while I'm actually working on some abundance manifestation work, or whilst I'm listening to a podcast about something completely different. I think the key thing to do with regards to ideas is to have a notebook with you at all times, wherever you are. So when those bizarre ideas pop into your head at ridiculous times, you can just jot them down and not forget them. Other things that keep me creatively sort of flowing are the other sort of mastermind groups that I've joined, the different Facebook groups that I'm in, and bouncing ideas off of other people. I look around at what other people are doing. Obviously that has an influence. We can't help but be influenced by what else is available online these days. It would be almost impossible not to be. But yeah, I don't really struggle with getting the ideas to come to me. It's just getting the time to actually fit everything in. That's the issue. So great question, Yancy. I hope I went some way towards answering that one. There's another question from Rosemary St. Louis. She's from my Curious community. She's having problems with adding people to her MailChimp automation for her e-course. Feels like she's doing the right thing, but they just won't refresh in the queue. Not sure if the question's allowed, but it is allowed. It's all fine. So I think with regards to anything like that with MailChimp, obviously I could just be sarcastic and say Google it, because you'll probably find an answer, and you might do. But often the glitches and issues that you might have with a service like MailChimp, because they update their dashboard on a regular basis, you'll find a tutorial, but actually your dashboard doesn't look anything like the dashboard that you're then presented with, because it's been updated since. So that's the one thing that I find the most difficult with websites and all kinds of things. You just the tutorials are very, very quickly out of date. My top tip for something like that would be, first of all, check the email that you're sending your emails from. If you're being allowed to add people to the list, but then they're not actually receiving your emails, it could be because you're sending your emails from an @Gmail account or an @AOL.com account. Recently, it's been the case that with MailChimp in particular, I don't know about Aweber because I don't use Aweber, but with MailChimp in particular, it's been the case that you have to have an email address that's a proper website email address. So mine is sarah@acatlikecuriosity.com, and if I use my Gmail address, because I do have a Gmail address as well, my emails are then less likely to actually reach the inbox of the people I'm sending them to, and they're more likely to just be sent to trash or spam, which is very, very irritating. So if you're managing to add people but then they're not getting your emails, that would be a thing to check and look into whether, with the website that you have, whether you can have an email address that comes from your web address rather than just a generic Gmail type of address. So that's one thing to check. If the people you are adding are not appearing on your email list at all, I would actually recommend contacting MailChimp. I had an issue with them with automation on my account, and it still hasn't totally been resolved, but they were very, very helpful about it and very much kept me in the loop with regards to how it's going to be solved, because I know they do have some issues with automation, particularly for people that have plain text emails. Sometimes they're turning up blank instead of having the content inside of them. So I would recommend Rosemary, if it's the case that people just aren't being added, it's not functioning as it should, then perhaps email them and let them know or contact their support, and they should be able to help you out. So I hope that helps with the problem that you're having. Let's have another one from the Curiously Gorgeous Sisterhood. Ashley Matheny. How can I better engage in this awesome sisterhood? I was a little busy and I didn't have the time to fully explore it yet. Good question. For those of you who don't know much about the Sisterhood, it's a community, a creative community, where I house all of my e-courses and everything else that I have to offer, alongside a whole bunch of downloadable gifts and alongside a whole bunch of podcasts and video tutorials and all kinds of things that are there to help people be more creative, to help people to invite more creativity into their life. So that's the whole point of the Sisterhood. The only issue with groups like that, and I've had this myself sometimes before as well, you kind of join the group and you're all excited, but then it's almost like, oh, there's too many things, I don't know where to start. So actually, if you're struggling with that, I would suggest looking at the things that I send out monthly to the Sisterhood. So every single month I send out a newsletter. And in that newsletter, there are links to all the latest things. So every single month we have a creative challenge, which is usually about half an hour, 45 minutes of an art video that takes you step by step how to recreate that in your own style. Okay, you might start with that. Also within that email though, there are links to how to set up an altar for that particular month and how to set your intentions. You might not have time for the art portion that particular month, but you might have time to do the altar setting for that particular month. That's fine. And also within the emails at the moment, I'm highlighting the podcasts that I have. Now the podcasts are about sort of 20-25 minutes long, so they're not long to listen to, but it might be worth starting with those every month. So every time I send out the email, just pick and choose a couple of things from the newsletter to explore, because that might help you just to start having a look around rather than thinking, oh, I don't know where to start. Yeah, I hope that helps anyway in terms of just starting to engage with what's in there, because I know there's a lot. Another question. We've got Belinda Conybeer from the Curiously Gorgeous Sisterhood again. We found our dream home property. We now have to pay a large mortgage interest rate for the next 2 years. How can I get my jewellery out there and selling? I desperately need to start selling things so I can help to pay for the property. Any suggestions very welcome. Okay, it's a great question, and I think it's the type of question that probably all of us have at some stage about something, whether it's a mortgage, whether it's a bill, whatever it is. Are we going to be able to make enough money, and how can we make enough money to actually make it work? Belinda creates these gorgeous pieces of jewellery that are house the ashes of your loved ones or your pets who've passed away, and they're kind of melted into this sort of fused glass. It's beautiful, really, really gorgeous. It's eternalashes.com.au is her website. So Belinda, my tips for you, I think if you're selling something like that, it's a very visual market. So I would recommend using some of the tips that I gave about Instagram, setting up an Instagram account and sharing as many pictures of your lovely jewellery there as you can. And perhaps whilst you're at it, also use the ift.com website to set up an automatic thing where whenever you post on Instagram, it also posts it onto Pinterest for you, and set up a board on Pinterest. And that way you're sharing your jewellery in the two most visual areas of social media, if you like. So if you can start maybe to do that on a regular basis and just see whether that brings more people through the door of your shop, see whether people are more interested. Other things you can do with regards to just gathering interest, getting people to know you, would be perhaps a little bit of behind the scenes footage of perhaps how the fused glass process works, or a little tour of your studio or something like that that you can share maybe on Facebook, that you can share on YouTube, that just will help put feelers out in lots of different directions. And maybe try one or two of these things and just see which one brings the most people to your door, and whether that gathers any interest. I know that you've done fairs and different things as well. It could be worth, if you haven't already, contacting local vets and hospitals and different places and seeing whether you can leave your details there, so that when people are bereaved in any way, they know that there's a local service that can be called upon. Because I think in times like that, probably local is best. I would think you'd want to be able to maybe meet the person if you could at all. It would be useful. So perhaps the local area might be a good avenue to explore as well. So I hope that helps. I think the key thing underlining all of that though needs to be to just keep your vibration high. So keep your eyes on the prize, keep your thoughts positive, keep your self-talk positive, keep imagining yourself reaching those goals and paying for those bills easily, as much as you can, so that you don't sort of fall prey to that kind of, oh, it's never going to work out, is it? It's never going to work out. That kind of doom mentality that sometimes can creep in when people are a little worried about bills and that kind of thing. So I hope that helps a little with that question. And the last question from Sharon Gangle on the Curious Community was, what was day one like when you started your creative journey on an income level? Was it a long process, or did you jump right into it all, or was it just a group or a class? That's a great question. So when I started out being creative and creating art and things, I hadn't really done it at all since school. And when I was at school, for some reason, I just didn't think I was any good at it. I thought I was rubbish and I'd never be any good, and so on and so on. And it wasn't until I was kind of 27 and I had known for a long time that something was missing. Something wasn't quite right, that I needed something extra into my life, as it were. I wasn't happy, but I wasn't sure what that something was. So that was the stage at which I started to explore creativity. And of course I didn't start earning money straight away from what I was doing. That'd be quite difficult. To start with, an awful lot of what I did was kind of rubbish. So it wouldn't have been something that would be able to be sold. But I started with looking at other people's websites online and other people's blogs online, and really being inspired by, oh, these people have managed to put this together themselves. How have they done that? And I watched a few YouTube videos and different things, and I went to a local adult education art class for a little while, and just dabbled a little bit until I felt a little bit more comfortable in my skills and in my creative output, if you like. All this time I was still working a full-time job, still working in education, working in schools in the UK. And then I started, once I'd got to the stage where I was quite confident with what I was producing, I started with an Etsy shop. I'd had a blog on Blogspot for quite a long time, before that anyway. And I started to sell a few things here and there. but still it wasn't enough to support me financially initially, not for quite a long time. So I did quite a lot of work around my day job, which was quite exhausting for quite a long time. But I would snatch little minutes here and there. I would snatch some time at lunchtime to update my social media. I would snatch a bit of time in between lessons to jot down ideas for blog posts. I'd have a notebook with me constantly and be writing out, this new idea for an e-course or this or that or whatever had come to me during the day. So I was kind of going through the motions at work, but I was very much, my head was elsewhere altogether. And it was like that for a good, maybe a year and a half, 2 years. And then I decided to give up the teaching in schools, to give myself more time. And I started to actually teach privately from my home. So I also teach music one-to-one, and I teach art lessons, and I teach blog and web design lessons. So I kind of thought outside the box of, well, what can I do? What do I have? What skills do I have? How can I use them? And how can I set myself up so that I don't have to go to a job for 5-6 hours every single day, so that I can work from home, and then in between working I can focus on building my business. And that's where I am now today. So now I'm at the stage where my private teaching covers all of the bills that I need to pay and everything else, and the online business is growing and growing and growing and growing. But it has been a process. I started back in 2011 and it's now 2016. So if that gives you a bit of an idea of a trajectory, that's great. I think it's worth it though. I think that even though it's taken a bit of time to get from where I was to where I am now, I'm much happier where I am now, and I'm really, really excited for what's to come next. So those are all of the questions that I have from the people in my communities. If you would like to get involved in asking me questions that you would like me to answer, then you have two choices. You could join my Curious community on Facebook. So if you just put in the Curious community, you should be able to find my Facebook group. Or you can join my Curiously Gorgeous Sisterhood, which is my creative community, where you have access to all of the e-courses and e-books and podcasts and video tutorials and all of those things that we mentioned earlier on in the video. So I'll leave some links underneath this video so that you can explore a little bit further. I'll be doing these Curious Chat sessions hopefully every single month, and I will be posting up the next month's Q&A session very, very soon. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope the answers to those questions were helpful for you. Thanks so much.